All right, this is the country national initiatives as it relates to the pandemic. Since it's 1, 2, 3, it's the country national initiatives, 1 to 3 days, getting things done by Wednesday per Dr. Fauci, 1 to 3 days, 1 to 3 weeks. We're also looking to have a country national initiative, that's what we're talking about, for the next 6 months or until February 2022, starting right now. These 3 initiatives. I'll explain them. And of course, the next 3 years of the Build Back Better term. But these 3 country national initiatives, 1 to 3 days, 1 to 3 weeks, and of course, the national initiative to February starting now, and 1 to 3 years, getting things done, having things accomplished. Exit Strategy COVID Pandemic Task Force. Exit Strategy COVID Pandemic Task Force. Out the pandemic motions, ending the pandemic. 1, 2, 3. As simple as 1, 2, 3. The first one is ending the pandemic. The second one is judiciary reform. These are country national initiatives. This is for everyone. Business and government. Government and business. Country national initiatives. 1. Ending the pandemic. Exit Strategy COVID Pandemic Task Force. Out the pandemic motions. Ending the pandemic. Get more into detail with that. The second one is judiciary reform, which we commonly call defund the police, but it's judiciary reform is establish justice, build back better. Establish justice, law and order, and defund the police. The third one is red money. Red money. It's money. We live in Western capitalism, and we're on the VK series, Bayesian economics, but it's the self-feeding V of the red money. Using colloquial money, it will be buy American and buy local. Same national initiative until February 2022. You'll be focusing on buying American and buying local only. Buying American and buying local only. 1, 2, 3, country national initiatives. Ending the pandemic, judiciary reform, defund the police, and red money. The first one on exiting the pandemic, ending the pandemic. We're going to post successful vaccination numbers. We're in the process of what's called National Emergency Preparedness Training by the military. The military will be in the 11 target cities and around the country. National Emergency Preparedness Training, but as we begin this, we will post successful vaccine numbers because we're going to have a ceremony to get out of the pandemic. The way the pandemic will work is, we will have a ceremony or several ceremonies around the country, one in St. Louis, the epicenter of the pandemic. Have a ceremony here. Then we will give the ceremony to the world so that they can have a ceremony and exit the COVID-19 pandemic. And we'll go back to our separate freedoms. But again, we will post successful vaccination numbers. Successful vaccination numbers. So this is cases, pre-vaccine. So how many number of cases were there pre-vaccine? How many survivors were pre-vaccine? How many deaths pre-vaccine? Then we're going to look at our target number of vaccine for herd immunity. Then we're going to look at the number of vaccinated the first time and the number vaccinated the second time. How many we have total. We know we have some 320 million people in America vaccinated. So we have the target number goal for herd immunity. We also want to look at the number of cases post-vaccine. Number of cases of COVID-19 post-vaccine. So we're looking at the number of cases pre-vaccine. And we're looking at the number of cases post-vaccine. We look at the number of survivors post-vaccine. So we look at the number of survivors pre-vaccine. And now we look at the number of survivors post-vaccine. Looking at the number of deaths pre-vaccine. We look at the number of survivors post-vaccine. The number of deaths post-vaccine. This will give us our successful vaccination numbers. You post these successful vaccination numbers, and then we'll have fireworks or different ceremonies like some other cities have done to exit the pandemic. The Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, Dr. Fauci tells us to make sure that we're out of this pandemic by September of 2021. Dr. Anthony Fauci told us to be out, Fauci, by September of 2021. The Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, I'm going to look over here and get this quote. But he says, although the U.S. has missed the opportunity to totally eradicate the disease, and I'm going to have to disagree with that right away, but missing the opportunity to totally eradicate the disease, but this is what we're going to follow from the Surgeon General. Although the U.S. has missed the opportunity to totally eradicate the disease, he said people can still take steps to keep the situation from getting worse. It is really important that we convey that success does not equal no cases. It is really important that we convey that success does not equal no cases. Murthy said, success looks like very few people in the hospital and very few people dying. Success looks like very few people in the hospital and very few people dying. So the exit strategy in COVID pandemic task force out the pandemic motions ending the pandemic. We will look at successful vaccination numbers. We know that the pandemic was a bio war, an econ war, and a psychological war. There were crime issues and environmental issues. We will be evaluating our COVID. We'll be being accountable, business and government, for COVID. We'll look at Hebrews 9:22, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And we're going to look at COVID, C-O-V-I-D, and the self-feeding V, the red money, also, and what it is to have colloquial money. But we're going to talk about the C-O-V-I-D, self-feeding V, as in an individual, and the ID part, like identification. So the COVID, a covenant. The COVID, a covert. So a covert you, a covenant with you, of yourself. You see the self-feeding V and the ID, identification of yourself, and that is groups and individuals, individuals and groups. So the covenant you, covert you, of yourself. So a higher self and secular establishment. The ID for your higher self, higher being, and or secular establishment. We must work on getting away from introversion. We must also look at the fact that curb your enthusiasm. Getting away from introversion, curb your enthusiasm is put your enthusiasm on the curb in that quarantine, probably outside. It's also a time in this COVID, COVID group, for new ideas for groups. New ideas for individual, new ideas for a group. Renaissance, radical reform, and revolutions, the ideas that it made for. So again, number one, getting out of the pandemic. These are country national initiatives. We will present these successful vaccination numbers. We will do the things to process out of the pandemic, and we'll be ending the pandemic. Thank you, Dr. Anthony Fauci, as well as Surgeon General Vivek Murthy. Our next thing is, of course, is defund the police. Number two, of course, our Constitution says we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. Establish justice, build back better. We are in the process of establishing justice. We will be having defund the police as the name for judiciary reform, but all four aspects, all four components of the judicial system must be reformed. The police, we must put in, we have a long list of demands to put in for the police. And we have the prosecution and public defenders, or the court system. We have a long list of Sixth Amendment things to put in for them, as well as sentencing disparity must be combated. Next, we have the prisons, and we know we need better rehabilitation. Better rehabilitation. some conditions better, but much better rehabilitation. We also have the fourth component, which is probation and parole, and that's re-entry, and we need better, much better re-entry. So all four of these components must be reformed. Judiciary reform, defund the police, establish justice, build back border for law and order. We're going for crime-free cities. So again, these are country national initiatives. 1, 2, 3. The third one is money. Red money, colloquial money. At one time, New York was getting into New York pizza. Chicago was getting Chicago pizza. And there was some competition between the two cities, but obviously the competition that had to take place to who has the best Chicago pizza in Chicago, who has the best New York pizza in New York. And so these red money things must take place. These things that are the foundation of why your city put on for your city, why your city is the city that it is, economically, socially, culturally. Red money. Buy American, buy local, and this is an initiative to make sure we're strengthening the dollar here locally until February of 2022. So these are country national initiatives. Everything will be in those three. There's no reason to do anything else for the next 6 months. Let's make sure we got infrastructure things coming up also. So we have 3 years to get real things accomplished. 1 to 3 days, 1 to 3 weeks. 6 months initiative, country national initiative. 1, let's get out the pandemic. 2, establish justice. Build back better. We're going to have law and order and crime-free cities. And 3, of course, stabilizing our residential, stabilizing our commercial, and our money, making sure the money system is proper. In God we trust. Let's get out the pandemic safe and healthy.